In the face of unimaginable tragedy, a man emerged as a beacon of hope. Will Jimeno prepped for 13 grueling hours beneath the rubble of the Twin Towers on that fateful day, became a symbol of resilience and courage. As the world watched in horror, Will fought against the odds, clinging to life and the will to survive. His story is one of bravery, determination, and the unbreakable human spirit. Join us as we explore the incredible journey of a hero who turned a harrowing experience into a powerful message of hope and motivation. Will Jimeno crosses the Hudson and comes straight to Jersey.
Welcome, everyone. Shout out Jersey. I am your host, Joe Zapata, and my next guest represents what it is to be Jersey strong. He is a retired New York City, New Jersey Port Authority police detective, and on September 11th, he spent 13 grueling hours buried under 220 stories of concrete, glass, steel by the South Tower of the World Trade Center. He's written 2 books. One is Sunrise Through the Darkness, and a children's book, Immigrant American Survivor, a little boy who grew up all 3. All available on Amazon. And in 2006, a movie called World Trade Center starring Nicolas Cage and Michael Pena actually details the story of him and his brothers in blue. So I welcome to the show another fellow Jersey brother. He is Mr. Will Jimeno.
How you doing? Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much for coming on. And first thing I want to say right off the bat is just thank you for your service. You know, I know you and my other friends who are police officers, Antoine Ferret, you guys don't want to be heroes. You guys are just doing it. But thank you. You guys are heroes to us. So thank you so much.
No, I appreciate the kind words. Like I said, you're right. You grow up to want to be a hero, and then something happens, and you realize that that's not what you want. I mean, you just want everybody to go home safe. But thank you for the kind words, and those words should carry over to every single man and woman who's out on the road today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And let's get started. You always wanted to be a police officer growing up?
Yeah, ever since I was a little kid, I just it really started growing up watching the TV shows on back in the day in the 70s. You know, I was watching, Adam 12, Emergency, Crooklyn, Starsky and Hutch, stuff like that. And I think the big catalyst for me was I had gotten injured. I fell down some stairs, knocked myself out, and I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey, which is 12 miles outside New York City. When I woke up, I literally got knocked out. When I woke up, there was a Hackensack police officer standing in front of me. He was a tall Italian, a lot of Italians back then, and they were very sharp, especially back in the day before they changed their uniforms. Not that they're not sharp today, but they were very paramilitary growing up. That blue uniform, that baby blue uniform, I grew up, demanded respect. But it gave security. And I remember just waking up, and to me, it was like a superhero. And ever since that day, I said, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to help people, most importantly. That was the big thing, And so since a child, that was my dream. That was my goal.
You went into the Navy first, is that correct?
Yeah. So, it was time. I went to Hackensack High School, had a great high school career, and it was time to graduate. I could have went off to college, but I just felt a strong calling to serve my country because being an immigrant from Colombia, coming here at 2 years old, this nation had given so much to my parents who are hard workers, and I always say, they came here legally, they worked really hard. My mom instilled in me, like, you know what, we're going to bring the good things from our heritage and we're going to participate in this country. We're going to give them the best we have from as being Colombians, but we're going to fly the American flag. We're going to learn English, and we're going to be something positive. And that was something that was instrumental for me, is to be part of this country and give something to them, to, for everything they gave me. So, my dad wanted me to go to college right away. He wanted me a doctor. And I said, Dad, I'm just not that sharp. I was like, he even offered me a car, and I'm like, no. So I joined the U.S. Navy. That for me was a great thing. I got to see 11 different countries. I got to really grow up and actually really understand what it meant to be outside the box of the U.S. and really appreciate what freedom was about. I don't care what anybody says. We are the greatest country on earth because of the freedoms we have. And every country should be proud of their heritage. I always said, if you're Korean, Japanese, Singapore, wherever you're from, and you're born there, you should be proud of your country. But if you come to the United States, you're going to make this your home. You should be proud of here, the good and the bad. And I know we're not perfect, but after traveling the world, I realized why so many people want to come here. And as a young sailor coming under the Coronado Bridge after going overseas for 6 months at a time, you realize why we're the most special country in the world because of our freedoms.
Yep. Let's start right into it. I will never forget September 11th. I know exactly where I was. All of us have a bad day in the office, but you had a really bad day in the office. Take us through that Tuesday morning. What happened when you woke up, and take us through it.
Well, and I just want to preface by saying, it's not a we thing, a me thing. It's a we thing. I'm just a small slice of a big picture.
Mhm.
Just want to let it, we lost 37, the most in law enforcement history in one day.
Right.
But on September 11th, I was living a dream. I mean, it was 6 weeks before the attack. We had just bought our first home in Clifton, like I had mentioned before.
Yep.
And my wife, beautiful wife, Allison, I was married to her for now at the time 6 years, coming up on 6 years. Had a little girl named Bianca. She was 4 years old. And my wife was pregnant now, 7 months pregnant on September 11th with our second child. So I literally was living a dream. And, I tell people I never felt like I was going to work. It was a dream of mine. So I got up that morning. I was working day tour, 7 to 3. Uh, got ready for work, kissed my wife goodbye, kissed her belly goodbye, went into the next room and kissed my 4-year-old Bianca goodbye, and literally skipped down the stairs to my truck that had a busted side view mirror. And, I know a lot of people know that as Port Authority officers, we do well financially. Uh,
Overtime.
yeah, but for me, it was never about the money. But I'm blessed. A great job, good money, good benefits. But I was still a rookie, so my side view mirror was busted. I had duct tape on it, and it was a 20-minute drive from Clifton, New Jersey to the bus terminal, right through the Lincoln Tunnel, and went downstairs to the locker room. Like I tell everybody, we never outgrow high school. I mean, here we are, trusted with the law, carrying weapons, and
Mhm.
everyone's busting chops like it's high school,
Yeah.
and got our uniforms, went up to a roll call where we're given our assignments for the day. I was given assignment post 3-5, which is the corner of 42nd and 8th Avenue in front of that building. Went out, normal day, beautiful day, as history will show. It was for those of us that were there or remember, it was not a cloud in the sky. For the young generation listening now, it was just a gorgeous day. You couldn't ask for a better day. And I was just doing my job. What we have in the morning is called the rush, where people from New Jersey, Connecticut, upstate New York, just the whole tri-state area is coming into Midtown Manhattan through our bus terminal, and there's thousands of people. So we're strategically placed throughout those buildings to make sure everybody's safe. Give information, make sure we're there for any type of medical emergency. So we're strategically placed. So just a normal day. I had 8th Avenue behind me. There was a taxi stand there. I was leaning up on one of the posts there, looking at the doorways in front of my building as people poured out. I had an awning above me, and to my right, where the awning stopped, I could see the corner of 42nd 8th Avenue. And standing there was Sergeant Ross with a couple other officers, McNerney and Sanchez. And I just happened to look to my right, and I see Sergeant Ross kind of pointing and looking at something coming above us. And I didn't know what it was. I couldn't see it. It was so much city traffic, I couldn't really hear anything. But what I did notice was that the intersection of 42nd 8th Avenue went dark for a second, like a big shadow came over. I thought it was weird, but I didn't really think anything of it. Went back to doing my job. A few minutes later, our radios crackled. 840, all units, 840 of the police desk, which means, everybody come back to police desk,
Mhm.
which I don't recall it happening during the 9 months from my graduation, January 19th of 2001, at the World Trade Center, at the Marriott, to that point.
Okay.
For them to call us all back, I crossed the street over 41st, went to Post 5 where I met up with my fellow officer and classmate, Dominic Pizzulo, who was just a great guy. Dominic, unlike me, became a cop more for the finances. He
Mhm.
was a high school teacher out of the Bronx, but in those 9 months, he learned what it meant to be a cop and be part of the Thin Blue Line. But he was just a great individual, and I go by Will. My mom calls me Willie. My family calls me Willie. And Dominic, I let him call me Willie because he was such a cool cat. He helped me with my move when it was time for move to my new house. And we're walking back to the police desk through what we call the main building there. And he just said, Willie, something bad must have happened for them to call us all back. I said, yeah, something really bad happened. So we went back, came around the corner of the police desk. And one of the things I learned in the military, which I share with people all the time, is something that I learned from a second class bosun mate in the Navy is always follow somebody into a bad situation that know what they're doing, because the percentages of you coming out are much higher. What that means is as we grow and you grow in rank, make sure that you're learning the job, make sure that you're knowledgeable, because you might have to lead people and your decisions are going to be the difference between sometimes life and death. And as I came around that corner, one of the people that I felt fit that category was Sergeant John McLaughlin. I had been to several calls with him. He was always professional. He knew his job. And when I looked up there, I could see his face, and I could see that he was concerned, which gave me some concern. But we continued on to what's called our reserve room. Our break room went back there, and we had New York One, the news station, on. That's in New York, and a big TV set, and we could see the big black gaping hole of Tower One and smoke coming out of it. And I always tell people things happen in life that you don't think you're ever going to encounter. I suck at math unless you owe me money. Then I know what you owe me with interest. But uh, in high school, I'm thinking, when am I going to use algebra? And thank God till today, I haven't need algebra.
Mm-hmm.
But in the academy, they told us, look, Port Authority officers, what we do is we protect all the major transportation facilities in New York and New Jersey, all the airports, the bridges, the tunnels, the World Trade Center, the bus terminal, the PATH train, Port Newark, Teterboro. So they taught us that in 1993, we were attacked. And our facilities are target-rich environments. So what sets us apart from the NYPD and all our New Jersey counterparts are we're a target-rich environment for terrorists. And they would tell us, this is going to happen one day again. And again, it's like high school, right? When am I going to use algebra? When are we going to see terrorists?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I saw that TV set, Sergeant Ross said, those are terrorists. He's the one who saw the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And even back in 2001, the technology was far advanced that a plane wasn't just going to accidentally, of that size, flying into the World Trade Center.
Yep.
So at that point, we knew in our hearts they were terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
I turned around and grabbed a payphone, got through to my wife, Allison, who, if I had the opportunity, because see, back then we weren't allowed to carry our cell phones. I left my cell phone in the locker, back flip phone. So I got through to my wife. She was asking me questions. I told her I don't know. All I know is a plane had flown into the World Trade Center, and that's when our inspector, who was our commanding officer, came in the back, said, listen up, we commandeered a bus on 9th Avenue. We'll call your name off. Get on there. We're going down to help our brothers and sisters because, of course, the World Trade Center is owned and operated by the Port Authority and is protected by the Port Authority Police. So at that point, I told my wife I got to go. I hung up. Later, she told me, she goes, that's the first time you've hung up the phone without saying I love you. And, I didn't realize that, but, my mind at that point was the job. We got a job to do to help our brothers and sisters down there. So myself, Dominic Pizzulo, and a fellow officer, a senior officer, Michael Robles, we didn't even wait for our names to get called. We just started walking, got on the bus, and about 20 of us got on the bus. And Sergeant McLaughlin got into a police Suburban with Sergeant Feely and the inspector, and we were off. And usually it could take a little time to get from Midtown Manhattan to downtown. It could take you 20, 30 minutes, depending on traffic. We were flying that morning. I mean, we went through the village. Everybody, again, like high school, jibber jabbing on the bus. Hey, it can't be an airline, or have to be a Piper, a small Piper plane, and everyone's kind of arguing. It was 2 city blocks back when the bus just went silent. We looked to our right, and there was a person in the middle of the street. We see bleeding profusely, an FDNY ambulance was working on him, and that's when we realized, man, this is bad. 2 city blocks back, something hit this person. We went up another block, and we got off. We stopped and staged at the West Broadway, right by a block before Vesey Street. And I remember just getting off the bus and looking up, and all I could see is Tower 1 on fire with that big black gaping hole. And then I look at the corner of 2, and I saw the corner of 2 on fire. So in my mind, I thought, hey, the plane hit, blew up, debris went and hit the second tower. What we didn't know was when we're en route from Midtown to downtown, the second plane had hit. So we didn't know that around the corner of 2, there was another big gaping hole. We just didn't know that. And I remember just looking up and thinking to myself, man, this, as a child, right? And as a guy, I'll say this, you want to grow up and be a hero. And then you're presented with a big situation like this, and you feel this big. I mean, because in that moment, in this instant, this was bigger than anybody in the world, and you realize how small we are. And what makes us strong is not an individual, but when we come together. And I remember just standing there thinking to myself, man, we got to get up there. We got to break a wall so they can see our uniforms. We can get people home. But you felt helpless. We were just standing there. They told us to stand by. And I remember that's when one of our senior officers, Ronnie Delmar, said, look, and Ronnie had been in the 93 bombing. He said, look up, they're jumping. And that's when we looked up, and unfortunately people were jumping, some by themselves, some holding hands with other people. And it was just horrific. They would jump and disappear behind building 6. And the way I equate it is every time somebody jumped, and why I say this is because anybody's listening to this, is that you're important. Your life is important. Every person that day was important. And when you're lost, it's like a ripple effect. When you throw a stone in the water, you get that ripple effect. You don't realize how many people your life touches. every time those people were jumping, that's somebody's mother, father, brother, sister. The list goes on. And why I say it is because today what I talk about is also just, preventing people from doing bad things to themselves, suicide, so understand that your life is important. You matter. All these people mattered that day because you touched so many people and the repercussions are immense. But we're just standing there and just watching. That's when Sergeant McLaughlin had driven the Suburban up to the corner of Church and Vesey and parked it there and ran back through literally what was a debris field. There was nothing on Vesey Street and part of West Broadway, but just a war zone. And he came running up and said, "Hey, I need guys that know how to use Scott air packs." For those who do not know the Port Authority Police, again, we protect all the major transportation facilities in the New York area, so cops in both New York and New Jersey. But we're also your first responders. We're the first responders at the airport. A plane goes down, our department are the first ones there. So we're cross-trained not only in law enforcement, but firefighting, of course, as medical first aiders. So we had just graduated academy. So myself, Dominic Pizzulo, and a fellow officer who graduated with us as well, Antonio Rodriguez, who had 4 years on the NYPD, came over to our job. We said, "Hey, we just graduated. We know how to use Scott air packs." So at that point, we became a team of 3 guys and, four. And we started running toward the buildings. And I always tell everybody, I always thought I was a tough guy. I was 33. I was in the military. But I was scared, man. I was scared. We're running toward those buildings. And all I see is pieces of the plane, pieces of debris, and unfortunately, human remains. And it's not a natural thing, right? But at the same time, I thought to myself, I took an oath to serve and protect. And I could see Dominic's face, Antonio's face. I could see they were concerned. They were scared. I mean, but at the same time, we had a job to do. So we forged forward, got to the side of Building 5. Sergeant McLaughlin said, "Hey, meet us in the E-room." E-rooms are emergency rooms set up throughout the World Trade Center for first responders to get all the gear they need. So I said, okay. Now I had been to the Trade Center twice before on protest, so I didn't really know the buildings. So I just knew to meet him inside. And for those that were never there in the Trade Center before, 2 towers connected by what we call the concourse level, the mall level, where you had shops, restaurants, you had the escalators and elevators take you down to the subway and the PATH train. So I ran up to the corner of Church and Vesey. Church and Vesey. And I came around the corner and the police suburban was there. And that's when I realized, hey, dummy, stuff's falling from above because the police suburban had taken a big piece of concrete. I threw our equipment in there that Sergeant McLaughlin said, put our hats or PR-24s or memo books in. And then I looked down the street of Church Street and I just saw thousands of people running away, like being herded like cattle. Again, I didn't realize Tower 2 had been hit. So I run back, go into the lobby into the concourse of the World Trade Center, hooked up with the guys. We put on all the equipment and Sergeant McLaughlin, let's go. We're going to the police desk. So we went to the police desk, got on the elevator, went up there, got into the police desk. And it's funny because today, if you watch the French documentary where they follow the French filmmakers throughout the Trade Center, well, I'm not in it, but we are in the police desk while they're there. Because at one point they left the FDNY and hooked up with our Port Authority police detectives. I believe one of them was Wheeler. And they were in there. And if you watch that, you'll actually see Sergeant McLaughlin clear as day there. And he's actually ordering us to get more equipment. So we got a mail canvas bag, canvas cart. And we started throwing more Scott air packs, whatever we could get our hands on. At that point, I was pushing the cart. We got back on the elevator. When we came out into the concourse, I remember we were walking around where the escalators went down to the PATH and the subway. And we're coming around there. There was a steady flow of people coming from Tower 1. And there was a couple inches of water on the deck, and it was really bad. And I remember just seeing people helping each other. And people always ask me, "Will, what's the one thing you saw in 9/11?" I said, love. I said, love. I saw total strangers, and I can guarantee you different colors, skin, ethnicity, religion, guarantee you political views. They were all just helping each other. There was a black man with a white man carrying a blonde woman who had a severe cut on her leg. And, people are yelling, people are dead, it's just bad. And they're all helping each other. So I thought to myself, if we as first responders, we need to be braver than these people because these civilians are showing me what bravery is. And we came around the corner where you could have went right toward Tower 1 or left toward Tower 2, and we bumped into another crew of Port Authority officers. The only one I could remember was a fellow classmate of mine, Warren Stewart. We used to call him Stewie. And he was pushing a cart just like we were. There's about 5 of them, and at this point, there's 4 of us. We kind of talked a little bit. Sergeant Clark was talking to their sergeant, then they broke off. And I remember just exchanging fist pumps with Stewie. I said, be safe. And that's the last time we would see him or any of those Port Authority police officers. They never did find their remains, unfortunately. But we continued on to Tower 2. And again, I'm not even thinking, why are we going to Tower 2? All I knew is I'm following Sergeant McLaughlin. At that point, we met up with Christopher Amoroso. Christopher had been recently transferred from the bus terminal in Midtown Manhattan to the World Trade Center. And he was one of my OGT officers. He was like a class ahead of me, but he was a great guy. He was one of those guys that we have a saying, I'll go through a door with you no matter what's on the other side. I trust you with my life. That was Chris. He ran up to us, said, hey, can I join you guys? Sergeant McLaughlin said yes. He had already been injured. He took an injury over his left eye, I believe. And it's a famous picture of Daily News photographer. You see Christopher saving somebody who's got Nike gloves on. And we said, are you okay? And he's like, you know what? I'm fine. Let's get to the work. We got to get people here. And that's the kind of people that were there that day. The people working. Christopher, to me, embodies really heroism, because here he's injured and his only thought was, we need to get more people out of here. Yep. So at that point, went up toward the entrance of the lobby to Tower 2. There were big glass revolving doors. And Sergeant McLaughlin said, Jimeno, stay here with the cart. The rest of you guys follow me down to another E-room. And I stood there next to a Ben and Jerry shop. And it was tough because I could see into lobby 2. I see people who have died. I see people injured. I see people running out toward Liberty Street. I see NYPD and Port Authority cops shooting out the glass to let more people out. But then fear came over me again, because I could see out into the street and I could see concrete still falling. But worse was other bodies coming down. And those bodies were hitting people as they were going out. Okay. And I remember just thinking to myself, man, I'm scared. And that's when Bruce Reynolds, a Port Authority officer, senior officer, walked up to me. Bruce was from the George Washington Bridge, which at the time was a very senior command. I mean, I think he had at least 15 years on the job to even get up there. He was short, black, bald. He was wearing a Scott Air Pack. He shouldn't have even been in the building, because I think he had some kind of lung condition. But here he was helping. And he walked up to me and he goes, hey, Reynolds, GWB, George Washington Bridge. I said, Jimeno, BT, personal. And he just talked to me and he said, you know what? It's going to be a long day, kid, but we're going to get a lot of people home. And that's what I needed at that moment. And again, shows you the kind of people that were putting their lives on the line, because he shouldn't have been in the building because of a lung condition, but there he was. And at that point, we talked for a little bit. That's when the rest of the team came up. Bruce walked away. Unfortunately, we lost Bruce when that tower collapsed. They actually found him, I believe, the following February after they interviewed me and I told them what I seen. And they found him in front of the command center of 2 with a lot of other first responders, firefighters, cops. But they recovered Bruce. And again, just another person I talk about that shows what heroism is, you know. And a quick bit on Bruce Reynolds. Like I said, he's an African-American boy, but I think he wanted to be an Irishman. He was married to an Irish woman. He loved Ireland. He lived out in, if you want to call it redneck New Jersey, out Sussex County. And everybody loved him. You know, it's a lot of white people out there, rednecks, but they love Bruce. And Bruce was, back in the day, was the one black police officer at the St. Patrick's Day parade that would paint his black bald head green, because he loved the Irish. But that was the kind of heroes that were there that day. At that point, we started going back. We were going to head to Tower 1. And that's when Antonio Rodriguez said to me, Jimeno, let me push the cart, because you've been pushing from the police desk. Now, mind you, here we are with our uniforms, our gun belts. We got Scott Air Packs. Your adrenaline's running. And he says to me, he goes, you're not going to be any good if you're tired. And I thought, all right, teamwork. So we switched positions. Little did I know that would end up be one of the first factors to save my life, because at that point he got at the 6 o'clock position of the cart. Christopher Amoroso was to his 3 o'clock. Sergeant McLaughlin was at the 11 o'clock position of the cart. I was directly in front of it at noon, and Dominic was to the 2 o'clock position. And we started walking down this hallway. We would walk down the hallway, make a left to go to Tower 1. Halfway down there, we stopped because Sergeant McLaughlin got a radio call from this inspector asking where our position is. And then he was telling some firefighters and an EMT. I remember there was an EMT with him, said, hey, be careful. I just came up from the B1 level and the elevator shafts look like they're buckling. And as we all know, if a foundation is not good, you know, the top's not going to be good. And soon after that, that's when we heard a humongous boom. And I turned around from where we were walking and I could look into the lobby of 2, and it was a huge fireball the size of my house. And I'm just standing there holding on my helmet because everything's shaking like out of a movie. And I remember what I said about, just remember what I said about following somebody who knows what they're doing. In that split second, what Sergeant McLaughlin saw, which I didn't see, was as the building is actually collapsing, it's sending a wall of debris toward us. Sergeant McLaughlin quickly saw that. In his mind, in his training, he said, hey, what do they do in the Middle East? They'll blow something up, let the first responders come in, kill them again. So he thought it was a car bomb. So in that split second, he said, run toward the elevator. I didn't know where we were going. All I knew, and it was a miracle, there was a door to our right, which led to a freight elevator. And Dominic started running. I followed Dominic. I could see, look behind my shoulder. I could see Sergeant McLaughlin coming. We hit this hallway. That's the first time I said, hey, man, like, what I get myself into? Because I see the lights flickering and I see brown stuff. Which one I know today is the building coming down. And Dominic started turning to the left. For a split second, I thought I saw light in front of me. Now, mind you, we're between the towers.
Yep.
I'm like, run to safety. But then I remembered we don't leave each other. We promised each other we wouldn't leave each other. So I started following Dominic. That's when something big picked me up, threw me on my back. And I just had raining concrete. It sounded like a million freight trains coming down on us. And the first line of defense was a police officer here, communications. So I went for my radio, had a mic on my lapel, and I'm yelling 813, which is everybody come. R13 is everybody come. And I'm yelling 813, officers down, help us, help us. All I could say was I'm at the World Trade Center because I don't know where I'm at in the building. After a couple calls, something hit my hand. I lost my mic. All I did was hold on for dear life with my helmet. I had a chin strap on. Something hit my helmet so hard it ripped it off my head. So all I could do was sit there and hold my head and my helmet and my head afterwards. And it just seemed like the whole world was coming down on us. And that's at that point that everything just stopped and everything was silent. And we were in the pitch dark. I mean, completely pitch dark. And I didn't know what to do. I'm just sitting there and there was a hole above us about 20, 30 feet up. And slowly light was starting to come through. It was really dusty. And when I could finally see, we were literally buried in concrete. I had a big, what I know today was a wall that fell on me. It was about probably this thick. It was huge. It missed Dominic, and Dominic is now buried to my left side in a push-up position. And we were in a small little cavern, and I could see my feet. I couldn't see my feet, but toward my feet, it was nothing but concrete. On the other side of that was Sergeant McLaughlin. He was actually trapped in a fetal position. And in the first collapse, he was just trapped. He wasn't injured. He was literally just stuck. And that's when Sergeant McLaughlin said, sound off. So I said, Jimeno, Dominic said, Pizzulo. And then we didn't hear Christopher Amoroso or Antonio Rodriguez. So I started yelling them, what we call them, Chris, A-Rod, Antonio Rodriguez, we used to call him A-Rod. And I yelled their names for like 2 minutes, and that's when Dominic said, Willie, they're in a better place. That's when we realized we lost two fellow officers, two fathers, two husbands, two great Americans. And that was tough. But Sergeant McLaughlin, being the leader, said, hey, what's everybody's condition? That's when the pain started setting in. The shock was wearing off. And I was feeling a lot of pain. Just imagine 80 Chevy Suburbans on your left side, because I was buried from underneath my left armpit all the way down, exposing only my right knee that was in a 90-degree angle.
Were you able to breathe?
It's amazing what your body can do. We were breathing. We were coughing and stuff, but I can't remember like dying from the smoke. It's almost like we became part of the building, to be honest with you. Dominic said, I'm not hurt. I'm stuck. I think I could get out of here. It took him a little bit, but he shimmied out of there, and he literally had to crawl over my face and get into this small cavern to my right. Not much room, just for him enough to like kind of crouch down. At that point, he said, Sarge, I can go up for help. And Sergeant McLaughlin said, no, you got to get Jimeno out, and you and Jimeno get me out, because he said, hey, it's a debris field out there. You'll never find us. And that was a tough moment because, as individuals, I don't care how tough you are, how team-oriented you are, we're still human beings. And there's a self-preservation mode in our bodies. And Dom was like, I can get out there. And he said, no. And there was a tough conversation. Dom said, well, I got kids at home. I said, bro, I got kids too, and I got a baby on the way. And but he did what I felt was the right thing. He said, no, I'm going to get you out. And he started working on me. And we even laughed a little bit because I had a piece of rebar wrapped on my right side with a piece of concrete that he would pull off, but the rebar would swing back and hit me. And for a little bit, he was kicking my ass. And I said, bro, you're kicking my ass, with more colorful words, of course. And we laughed, and we needed that. I think that I tell people in any tragedy, it could drive you crazy. And that little bit of laughter gave us a little pause. But then after a little bit, he couldn't get me out. He sat back. He goes, Willie, I can't get you out. And that fear came over me again. That's when we heard another boom. That was now the second tower coming down. Unfortunately, now Sergeant McLaughlin is actually being crushed to the point that his sidearm is actually being pushed into his body. He's yelling. I'm yelling because more stuff's falling down and hurting me. And then Dominic, unfortunately, something came through and hit him really bad, sat him down like a rag doll right next to me. When everything was said and done, I'm alive in more pain. Sergeant McLaughlin is alive, but in a lot of pain. And next to me, unfortunately, Dominic is dying. He took a internal injury and he's profusely bleeding out of his mouth. And he said, Willie, I'm dying. I said, man, hold on. He goes, Willie, don't let anybody forget that I died trying to save you guys. I said, Dama would never let anybody forget that. At that point, he actually asked Sergeant McLaughlin for a break. He said, can I get a 3-8? That's our code for a break. And Sergeant McLaughlin just knew something bad had happened. He didn't know. And he said, yeah, you can have a 3-8. And his last moments, he pulled out his sidearm and he fired a 1 round at the hole above us to like let somebody know we're down there. And he passed. And that was very difficult. I was hysterical. Sergeant McLaughlin had to calm me down. He said, don't use up your energy, and then continued our fight for the next many, many hours. We went through a lot. We prayed a lot, had fireballs come in, almost burned my arm. Later, Dominic's gun fired. 15 rounds went above my head. And I kept leaning toward my boss, and I said, Sarge, what's going to happen to us? And it was hard to hear him say this, but he goes, look, we're suffering from compartment syndrome because we're being crushed. If they don't get to us by a certain point, we're going to die. So at that point, it became just us willingness to fight and live. And we kept telling each other, well, he kept telling me, we can't fall asleep. If we fall asleep, we're going to die. So if I heard him fading, I'd yell. If he heard me fading, I'd yell. And I got a big mouth, so I was closer to the hole. Nobody could hear him. So I'm yelling all night long, PAPD officers down, PAPD officers down. I cannot express to anybody listening how hurt and how exhausted I was. We became literally the Michelin men. Our bodies swelled up like 4 or 5 times our bodies. My hands, during the course of the night, I kept trying to free myself by using my handcuffs. I'd hit the concrete, but it would take forever to lift my hand and bring something down. My cuffs were there. I finally got my magazine out of my weapon at the time because we carried 49-56 Smith & Wessons, which would not fire without the magazine, but they were big bolt guns. But I took out the magazine, used that as a hammer, put it down, couldn't find it. Finally, 3-4 hours later, I was able to lock the gun out of my holster, try to pull the trigger. It doesn't work because it doesn't have the magazine. And then I used that as a hammer, put that down. I couldn't feel anything. Every time I put something on, I couldn't find it again. When they found me later, all that equipment was right there. But our hands had swollen so much that I couldn't feel it. And I cannot express the horror that evening brought us. But it was around 8 o'clock at night. But before that, which is the most important part, I always say, of the story, of the human story, not just Will's story, was I'm Catholic, I'm Colombian. We believe in God. Sergeant McLaughlin's Italian, Irish, and we prayed a lot down there. And we just kept pushing ourselves. But at one point, I wanted to die. It was around, I don't know what time, after Building 7 fell, it was getting dark. I've been crushed. We lost teammates, been burnt, got shot at. I just wanted to give up. I wanted to die. I wanted the pain to be over. And I remember just making my peace with God. I said, God, thank you for 33 great years. Thank you for 6 years with my beautiful wife, Alice, and 4 years with my little girl, Bianca. For my parents, to bring me to the greatest country on earth, for instilling me to be proud of being a Colombian, but being an American. And I said, if I die today, I'm okay with it because I die as a cop, doing my job, trying to do the right thing for people. And I said, God, I felt everybody was going to go to heaven that day. So I'm going to ask you for 2 favors, God. One was to let me see my little girl be born because Allison was supposed to give birth in December. And I knew how hard it was going to be for her, for me not to be by her side. It's unfortunately, we've seen too many times with fellow officers and since 9/11 who have lost their lives in critical incidents, whose wives are about to give birth and their kids are born and they don't have a father except memories. And I just felt I was going to be in that category. And then the second one, I said, God, when I get to heaven, because I felt that everybody's going to heaven because these, as I call them, cowards, the terrorists, attacked innocent human beings who were just trying to make better lives for their families. I said, God, I'd like a glass of water. We were so thirsty.
Imagine.
We were just like cake and concrete. And I closed my eyes and I told people, listen, you can call it whatever you want, a vision, a dream. But I closed my eyes and I was ready to die. And a peace came over me. And I see a person walking toward me. white glowing robe, no face, brown hair. Over his left shoulder in the distance is a pond with tranquil trees around it, real peaceful. Over his right shoulder was tall, endless sea grass. And I knew who it was. And like I tell people, you can say whatever it is, but for me, it was Jesus. He's coming toward me. And what's he got in his hand? And you can laugh at this. He had a bottle of water. I can't tell if it was Poland Spring, Avion, or what the heck it was. But I woke up out of that dream, that vision, with a fire in my belly that made me realize if I die, if I give up, I would have given up on my family because I didn't fight hard enough to get home to them. If I died, I would have given up on my sergeant because nobody could hear him. I was closer to home. If I died and I gave up, I would have given up on my country. But most importantly, if I gave up on me. And at that point, I said, if we die, Sarge, we're going to die on our terms, not these cowards' terms. Yep. And we fought for many, many hours till 8 o'clock that night when I heard the United States Marine Corps. Can anybody hear us? Being in the Navy, and I was in the LPH, we carried Marines. It was incredible to hear that. And I'm yelling, and I'm thinking, man, we're at war. The Marine Corps here. It was 2 Marine reservists, Jason Thomas and David Carnes, along with a civilian that just followed him. So if people remember that day, and for those that don't know, at a certain point during the day, they stopped all rescue work because people were getting injured going in there. So they had to pull all the first responders back because buildings were still falling. They didn't want anybody else to get hurt or die. But these guys broke through the lines. They came into the epicenter, the middle, and found me and Sergeant McLaughlin. I yelled, PAPD. They came, and there was a small hole to my left that I didn't even know was there, and they had a flashlight. And it was very relieving that they found us. And I kept saying, hey, we're here. And it took about 5 minutes. It was very frustrating because my hand literally, like I said, we became part of the building. He's shining the light, the one Marine, and I'm waving my hand because that's all I could do was wave this hand. Part of this hand, and I had my right arm free, but they came on my left side, and I'm like doing this, and I could see the light hitting the back of my hand. And they're like, we can't see you. We can hear you, but we can't see you. Somehow, some way, I mustered enough spit right here on the palm of my hand. And when they saw the difference in the skin tone, they're like, we got you, which was relieving. They sent the civilian down the pile, as they called it. He bumped into NYPD ESU truck, their SWAT team. Those guys came up. Scott Strauss, Patty McGee, and Chuck Sharika. Talk about bravery. A recovering alcoholic who used to be an MT, who came off the street, was going to render me medical aid. These 3 guys had to burrow their way in from my left side to get to me. And all I could see were 2 bald heads. It was Scott's head and Chuck, the medic. Patty McGee was behind them where the elevator shaft broke. And they had to work on me. Long 3-hour recovery. They finally got me out. I remember telling the Sarge, hold on. I came out that night around 11 o'clock. They found us at 8, so it was 3 hours operation. A lot of bad stuff happened down there during that point. These brave men were ordered to leave us many, many times because there's an encroaching fire. And they told them, no, we'll die with these guys. Those are the kind of Americans that were there that day and should be an example to future generations. But at that point, they pulled me out of the hole, and that's the first time I cried that night. I didn't cry when I got injured. I didn't cry when the guys died. I cried because I looked up and I could see the moon. I could see the sky. But I'm like, where's everything? And that's when the firefighter said, it's all gone, kid. That's when I realized I cried because I felt like we failed. There was so many people still within in the concourse level. And I knew a lot of people had died at that point. And at that point, they sent me down a line of hundreds of people onto an ambulance, took me to Bellevue Hospital. And that's the second time I cried because I thought that night, hey, you're a cop, you're a first responder. I know there's a lot of injured people. Maybe someone will pick at you because, you're trying to do the right thing. But when I get there, just tons of doctors and nurses standing around outside Bellevue. And I'm like, where's everybody? And they're like, you're it. I realized at that point was the scope of the loss of life at that moment. They whisked me in an operating room and had 18 surgeries. I flatlined twice that night. And I'm, it's a miracle I'm here today talking to you, but I want it to be an example of resilience that no matter what happens in your life, no matter what tragedies you go through, that you can come out on the other side. And it's not going to be easy, but never give up.
Yep. Will, I want to be respectful of your time also, but a couple questions I do want to ask is, I know how strong you are, but tell me about your wife, Allison. I know how strong she had to be to go through what you, because there's a lot of PTSD afterwards, a lot of things you got to go through. How is that with Allison?
Well, first of all, she's my hero. I mean, she's an angel, because she's talking about a woman who's 7 months pregnant on that night. I think what helped her throughout the day was that she was able to speak to me. But
Mhm.
I was a very, I would want to be a cop. Uh, I was a worker, if you want to say it,
Mhm.
aggressive. I surrounded myself by people at the bus terminal, that were senior guys who worked. They weren't, nobody's asking you to be a hero, but don't
Mhm.
be a zero. But these guys worked, and I love being around these guys because they taught me how to be a cop. And she knew me. She knew that I was gonna, if I had the chance to volunteer, I was going.
Mhm.
And what helped her that night was when they found me halfway through the operation, not halfway, I think it was closer toward where they got me out. They had doctors above us ready to amputate our legs. And when the doctor was above me in the hole, I couldn't see him. He says, "Hey, would you like me to call your wife?" And we all chuckled down there, believe it or not. I mean, we're still cops, and we there was a lot of jokes down there, and there was a lot of ball busting, and I remember saying it. I remember the guys laughing when I said it. They're like, the doctor said, "Would you like me to call you wife?" I said, "Yeah, I guess that'd be a good idea, wouldn't it?" And he actually called her, and of course I couldn't talk to her, so I just gave him information. Tell him this is Will, this is our phone number, this is where we live, and I told her a couple personal things, so she knew it was me,
Okay.
and that helped her. Like she couldn't believe when she got the call that the doctors, "I'm here with your husband. They're getting him out." He didn't really say anything to her how severe injured I was. I don't think
Mhm.
he knew how severely injured I was, so she was under the impression I broke a leg
Okay.
and maybe my pelvic bone. So when she got to the hospital, when she saw how bad I was, it really took a toll on her. But she was strong throughout the whole pregnancy. I worked really hard in rehab. They said, "Listen, if you can get yourself in a wheelchair, you can be there for the birth of your daughter." And my wife planned C-section. My birthday is November 26th, and on November 26th, 2001, my little girl Olivia was born, and I was by her side. Then my wife had to deal with being having a newborn and me coming home and literally having two newborns because I had
Mhm.
to relearn how to walk, get dressed. On top of that, which is something I talk about today, and that's what I talk mainly in the book Sunrise to the Darkness, is the PTSD and how that was destroying our lives. And I didn't even know I had it. Mine was anger. And Allison told me you had that from day one when you got home, and it got worse, progressively worse. And she stood by my side. Like I
Mhm.
said, guys, we can go into crazy stuff with the PTSD if you're on this podcast. But if you pick up the book, my
Yes.
wife has a chapter because we don't realize as first responders, if we get injured, yeah, we get the focus, but we don't realize that our families, our loved ones, what's called secondary PTSD, they're suffering too.
Mhm.
And sometimes we do things, we act ways. And the thing is, as I call it, Sunrise Through Darkness is a book that I wrote with my co-author, Dr. Michael Motes, who's a doctor of psychology with the military, is that uh, we all deserve happiness, and darkness comes in different shapes: PTSD, rape, murder, alcohol. You were beat
Mhm.
as a child. It's whatever darkness. That's how I encompass it. That's the common denominator. But we all have to figure a way to be
Mhm.
able to live our lives to get to that sunrise, to be able to be happy for you, your family. Because what I tell everybody is, anybody listen to this, I mean this. I want you happy. And understand, there's only 365 days in the year, right? If we're lucky to live till 90, which a lot of us won't, but do the math. 365 times 90. When we're born, we're in diapers. If we're lucky to get to 90, we might be in diapers again. And if you do the math right now, you'll see how many days that is. That's not a lot of days. And part of those days are already gone. So you want to make sure that no matter what tragedy you go through, you're able to figure out a way to get to your sunrise so you can be happy. And listen, life is tough. Life's a bitch. But
Mhm.
you want to try to make life to have as much good things in it. And you deserve that. So if you're out there, especially my first responder brothers and sisters, military veterans, our suicide rate is too high. Please be strong enough, be macho enough, be brave enough to be able to say, I got a problem. I got to go to help. And it took a bad incident with my family for me to realize that. And I don't
Yeah.
want it to be that you have to wait till a bad incident happens, or worse, you take your life, because then you don't realize, again, you mean so much to people. When you
Mhm.
take your life, you affect so many people that you don't even realize. And again, what made help me was that PTSD, I live with it. The day I get rid of it is the day they bury me. But you learn to live with your darknesses, no matter if it's alcoholism, you've been abused, you've been raped, someone in your family's been murdered, or you have to understand, you have to learn how to live with it. Mine's anger. I was angry at what happened to me, what happened to my fellow brothers and sisters, what happened to our country. You felt helpless. I was very angry. And does it rear its ugly head up from time to time? Yeah. So I had to learn to do exercise. Like when I felt that anger coming on, go for a walk, go hit a punching bag. For me, it's letting that negative energy out. I can't talk for someone, unfortunately, who's depressed. I can't even imagine, someone who's an alcoholic. But the thing is, there are people out there that are willing to help you. You have to be brave enough to say, I need help. And that's what it took for me and what really did it for me was I didn't want to be a bad father, bad husband, because I realized if I'm not a good father, through me, another generations of Americans would be messed up. And I wasn't going to let the terrorists, the cowards, to get to my kids. So I wanted to be the best I could. And today I still have to talk to my beautiful young daughters and explain to them sometimes, like, hey, remember when daddy yelled or daddy did this back in the day? Well, it's because I had an issue, and it's not only warfare, because honestly, guys, 9/11, that was war brought onto the US soil.
Correct.
And, our veterans, people have to understand that what they are going through, through their service came back with something they didn't want. So today I tell everybody, and again, it doesn't have to be war, just the grind of the job, the things we see that we wish we can unsee. We have to live with that. Your common civilian who is blessed not to have to see the things that we as first responders see, it's tough on us. And we all act differently, right? We all react differently to things. Somebody can see dead bodies not affect them, and other people can see a dead body and it's going to mess with them. And that's okay. There's nothing about being macho. We're just human beings, and we react differently. But we have to understand that at the end of the day, our mental health is very important. And I say mental health because there's mental illness, but we all have mental struggles. And it's not something that you should be ashamed of. And today we realize that, like, not like back in the day, especially as cops, we didn't want to talk to anybody because if we told them we had a mental issue, guess what? They're taking our gun. That's our job. That's our mortgage. Correct. Today, we're not at that state. Today we can actually talk about it as it should be because there are people who have mental struggles. I mean, look at all our first responders. I'll talk about the Port Authority Police. We have a lot of young men and women who served during the global war on terror who today are out there patrolling our facilities. And they've seen some bad things in during their time in the military. But that doesn't mean they can't be police officers. We need those people. They're experienced, but they're still human beings, and the mental struggle can also be not a tragedy. It could be just the rigors of life, paying the bills at the end of the month, for some people. Exactly. So I express to everybody that if you can pick up the book, and read it, because we have exercises in there that help people who don't want to go talk to a psychiatrist or a therapist. And this is my tip to anybody out there. Don't give up. Therapists are like car salesmen. They're a dime a dozen. If you can't get through with the first one, the second one, the third one, you keep going till you find the one like I did that's going to help you. And they're going to set you straight that you feel comfortable with. Keep going. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself.
Excellent advice. Your book is available on Amazon. Thank you so much, Will. I have two more questions. I know I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you went through everything you went through, mentally and physically. You have two beautiful daughters. If one of your daughters said, "Hey, Dad, I want to be a Port Authority police officer," how would you take that?
I've thought about it, but they don't. So I guess. But if they did, I would support them because you know what? You only have one life. I support both my daughters and what they do today, and I start realizing that life is short. Let people live their lives. If that's what it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Listen, we'll have an expiration date. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to see anybody pass, especially early in life. You want to live a full life, but if that's something that someone's passionate about, support them. Support them. Well, it's something good, healthy, and they're going to make a good living out of it. I support it. And for me, it's one of the most honorable jobs in the world, being a police officer. And thank goodness we're turning the corner here, where this war on cops is starting to subside. And like I tell everybody, do we have bad cops? Sure we do. There's bad in every line of work. Let's start with just parents. There's bad parents. You couldn't ask more than that. But there's so much more good in this world than bad. And those examples are set every day. And I'll just use the Port Authority Police on everything they do at our facilities, from defibbing people, from stopping robberies, drug interdiction at the George Washington Bridge. I'm very proud of our police department, every police department, and all the good men and women that are making a difference in everybody's lives today.
Yeah. One last question is about the World Trade Center movie that came out. I saw you on the John Berthel podcast. You did a great job on Real Ones.
Thank you.
Everyone should watch that. It's a great podcast. The movie, some people thought it was too soon, but I thought the movie was great. And they make a movie today. Something happens today.
Yeah.
What do you think of the movie?
It's not so much what I thought. My biggest critics were the senior cops, and so Sergeant McLaughlin is very respected, and nobody really talks like you respected him.
Mm-hmm.
I was a rookie guy, so those same cops that taught me how to be a cop, they're the ones that pulled me in a room when we were making the movie. Said, "You better make sure this movie's right." And I'm looking, I'm like, "Listen, guys, I don't know who you think I am. I'm the rookie here." I'm like, "But we're gonna do it right." And Oliver Stone came to my house and actually was standing right here. And I have right here the dog tags of my fellow officers that passed. And I said, "Oliver, we're not doing this for fame or money.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this to show future generations what our job did, what Americans did that day." And I said, "I want it to be like what your movie was." And he looked at me and I'm like, because Platoon, for those who have never seen Platoon, is about Oliver Stone. He's the rich kid who went to war. And I said, "Oliver, you fought and saw people die, your fellow Marines." And he said, "Will, it's been so long that I didn't think of it that way." And I said, "That's all I want, for you to tell the truth, honor these people." And I remember the biggest thing that I could ask for was we showed specials, the movie, specially to our cops before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And when those senior cops that I look up to um, came out and said, "You guys did right," I didn't care what anybody else thought. My senior guys felt the movie was done right. When you got senior cops, hardened guys, look at you and were crying, and then they come out and they said, "You did right," and I say, "I didn't. We did." I had the Port Authority, the backing of Chief Trusillo, the Port Authority Police entirely. We made sure our uniforms were right. We made sure everybody's name was correct. We made sure that people understood what we did on that day, as well as the NYPD, FDNY, and civilians. So for me, I didn't really care what the world thought about it. I knew that my senior guys were approved of it, and that's all that mattered. And since then, believe it or not, the movie's done so well throughout the world. That's the most incredible part. Yes, we represent the Port Authority Police Department. We represent America, but what we represent the most is human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I have kids, teenagers, college students, people in general reach out to me every single year when that movie runs, and they say thank you because we show the best in human beings, and that to me is the biggest compliment.
Yeah, it's a human story, and all of us came together that day. I have friends like Troy Amity, who has a construction company. He was sending trucks on the site trying to dig out people, volunteering. We had people dumping boats in the Hudson River just to get people from the ferry. All of us came together. It was a human story, and it was a great story, how we all came together on that day. It's going to be a 25th anniversary coming up soon, and I think it's important that the younger generation still remembers it, and the people that lost their lives, those brave people. Will, where can people find you? I know you're going to be doing some more speaking engagements. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram. It's easier to get me on Instagram at Wasp Archer, WASPARCHER. I do speaking engagement. I don't do it for a living, but I do get called a lot, and I'm blessed to be able to touch a lot of people. And I'm blessed to be able to talk to a lot of kids, military installations, first responders, and share the story, not so much my story, but the story of all of us that day, to share Dominic, Antonio, Chris, Bruce Reynolds, Warren Stewart, our 37 that we lost. And I think it's important, and I tell people this, it's not only remember 9/11, we say never forget. To me, as an American, it's never forget all our history, all the wars, because we're free in this country because so many people gave their lives. That's why I tell people, don't kneel at the flag. And I was against it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't kneel, because you're not kneeling for some cause. You're kneeling and you're disrespecting men and women because the blood is made out, the flag is not made out of cloth. It is made out of the blood of patriots, many of which are all different walks of life, all different colors. And yeah, maybe they weren't treated right at the time, but we're free and we're able to do what we want here in America because so many people died. So that flag is made out of blood. And I want people to understand that we need to respect this country, and we have to remember, and we have to educate our future generation of the cost of freedom. Ronald Reagan said it best. We are one generation away from losing freedom. So we have to make sure that we teach our kids, and to teach these kids, if they're Americans, if they come to this country and they have a background, a different heritage, bring the good things from that heritage, like my mom taught me. As a Colombian, bring the good stuff we have. And I still love the people in Colombia. I have a lot of family in Colombia. I'm proud to be, as they say, a Colombian American. But first, I'm an American. That's the God honest truth. I'm an American with roots that come from Colombia. But that's what makes this country great. We're a melting pot. And on September 11th, 81 different nationalities lost their lives in those buildings. And we came together. And going back to your point, what makes us strong is as we come together, like your friend from the construction. That day, everybody pulled together. And guess what? The terrorists didn't bring us to our knees. We brought them to their knees because we overcame that, and that's what we are. We're Americans. We're strong, and we're going to keep overcoming tragedies as they hit us.
Yep. And so your parents raised an incredible human being with you. I want to thank you so much for your time. And hopefully you and Allison, we all get together for some dinner sometime. You're right here in Jersey. You're a fellow Jersey brother.
I know. Nutley has some good restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Will, so much. We love you, brother. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Be safe. God bless everybody.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.